بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Continue in the chapter the author she has mentioned حفظه الله تعالى سب المسلم بدون حق, to curse out or call names, to call a Muslim bad names without right. And we have read a portion of what the author she has mentioned حفظه الله تعالى. In our previous class we have read the hadith that is in Sahih Muslim known as Hadith al-Muflis, the hadith and the narration of the one who was bankrupt, and the reality of calling people names and the likes like this is actual transgression. And to call a Muslim names is fusuq and corruption and a major sin, and it is also transgressing upon the rights of a believer. And the one who does that, if he does not fulfill that right in this life, then truly it will be fulfilled on the day of resurrection, when there is no bargaining in wealth or in property, but rather the only bargaining will be with good deeds. So we continue reading, and the author she mentions to clarify this issue, and because the hadith of the Muflis is clear that there will be individuals who will come on the day of resurrection, the one who is truly bankrupt and muflis from the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, yawm al-qiyamah, the one who come with salat, man yati bis salatin wa zakatin wa siyam, the one who performed all of these great acts of worship. He performed the pillar of salat and the pillar of zakat and the pillar of siyam, establishing these pillars of the deen, but also he came with something else. ويأتي وقد شتم هذا وقذف هذا وأكل مال هذا وسفك دم هذا وضرب هذا. And the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in that which has preceded that he will come along with performing all of those righteous actions. Also he has evil deeds, and he will come and he has taken the rights of others by cursing and calling bad names this one, and falsely accusing that one, and unrightfully eating the wealth of this one, and shedding the blood of that one, and hitting this one, and striking that one, and the likes like this. And so now the exchange will be on this day with good deeds and bad deeds, with good deeds and bad deeds. So this is the affair, and this is something that is dangerous. So this is something that a believer should be aware of, and that a believer should be cautious with regards to, that they would know that it's not from the character or the conduct of a believer that he will sit in people's faces and call them bad names, and that if he becomes angry, then he will guard his tongue, and she will guard her tongue, the believing man and the believing woman. وَمَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. As the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that whoever truly believes in Allah and the last day, then let him say that which is good, or else be silent, because the one who is not silent, then verily he is embarking on a dangerous endeavor, and he with his tongue, and he هذه الآفة آفة خطيرة, this tongue and the diseases of the tongue, بل هذه الآفات العديدة خطيرة على العبد, that these numerous diseases and ills of the tongue, they are very dangerous upon the servant, very dangerous upon the servant and his relationship with his Lord, and very dangerous upon the servant and his status and rank in this life and in the hereafter. So the author, she says about this, وَاللَّهُ يَقُولُ إِنَّمَا السَّبِيلُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ يَظْلِمُونَ النَّاسَ وَيَبْغُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ أُولَئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. أُولَئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. She mentioned the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, the meaning of which is, the way of blame is only against those who oppress men and rebel in the earth without justification. For such there will be a painful torment. And he referring to the issue here in the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, without justification. And this is also what has been indicated in the title of this chapter, Sabbu al-Muslimi biduni haqq, to call a Muslim names and to speak bad and to call him bad names in his face without right. And so far we have seen the issue of calling a Muslim bad names, but now there's the issue here of doing it without right. That means that there's an indication here that it could be done in right. Somebody could have the right to do that. And so not in every instance is it a sin to call a Muslim names or bad names, but this is the origin of the case. But there are some situations whenever it could be permissible and it could be allowed. And this is what the author she is going to clarify in this portion of the text. And the way of blame is only against those who oppress men and rebel in the earth without justification. Allah, He says, إِنَّمَا السَّبِيلُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ يَظْلِمُونَ النَّاسَ وَيَبْغُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ, without justification. أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. These are the ones that they will have a painful punishment. So the author, she mentions, حفظه الله تعالى, وقال الإمام مسلم حدثنا يحيى بن أيوب قال وقتيبة وابن حجر. نعم. قال مسلم رحمه الله تعالى حدثني يحيى ابن أيوب وقتيبة وابن حجر. قالوا حدثنا إسماعيل يعنون ابن جعفر عن العلاء عن أبيه عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال المتسابان ما قال فعلى البادئ ما لم يعتدي المظلوم. المتسابان ما قال فعلى البادئ ما لم يعتدي المظلوم. In this text here of this hadith, in the first word, al-mutasabani, there's a mistake in the print, and there's a sukoon on the scene. It should be a fatha. It should be a fatha. Al-mutasabani ma qala fa'ala al-badi'i ma lam ya'tadi al-mazlum. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the two people who are cursing and calling each other bad names, that which they have said, then the sin is upon the one who began the issue. The sin is upon the one who first called the names, as long as the one who is oppressed did not transgress the limits. Al-mutasabani ma qala fa'ala al-badi'i ma lam ya'tadi al-mazlum. That those two people who are calling one another bad names, this is about two individuals, both of them are calling one another bad names, but that which they have said together, the sin is upon the one who began that, and the first one to call the bad names. And all of the sin of the one who said it and the sin of the one who responded likewise, all of that is upon the one who began, so long as the individual who was oppressed, meaning the one who did not begin, the one who only responded, he does not transgress the limits. So long as he does not transgress the limits. And Nawawi, he mentioned rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَمَعْنَاهُ أَنَّ إِثْمَ السِّبَابِ الْوَاقِعِ من الاثنين مختص بالبادئ منهما كله. That the sin of the cursing and bad name calling that occurs between the two of them, that this sin is specific to the one who began that. All of it, the sin, all of it, he's the one who bears that. He began it, and because of his statement, and because he began this name calling, and the other person, he also responded like that and calling him names back, the sin of both of them is upon the one who began. So long, he says, إِلَّا أَن يَتَجَاوَزَ الثَّانِي قَدْرَ الْإِنْتِصَارِ, except if the second individual, the one who did not begin it, in this case is considered the mazlum, is so long as he did not transgress the boundaries of avenging himself, and so long as he did not go beyond that which was mentioned to him. نعم. فيقول للبادئ أكثر مما قال له. For example, if he said more than what he said to him. Like for example, if the person he began and he said, he called him an idiot, and he responded back and he said, you are an idiot and a liar, like this, adding to it. He called him an idiot only. So then he responded back, calling him another name and adding another name to it. Yeah, you're an idiot and a fool. Or if he said to him, you're so foolish, or you're ignorant, and then he responded back, you're ignorant and so is your mother, like this, like some people do it. Yadhan billah. At this time he has transgressed. At this time the second one has transgressed, and now he has sinned. But if the person he began and he said, for example, this person, he said to him, you're a fool, and then he responded back, you're a fool, like this is permissible for him. This is permissible for the second one, and the sin of that is upon the first one. This is the meaning of the hadith. Al-mutasabani ma qala fa'al al-badi ma lam ya'tadi al-mazlum. that those two men or those two people who are calling each other bad names, that which they have both mentioned, the sin is upon the one who began that, so long as the other one did not transgress the limits. So long as the one who was being oppressed and called bad names is being the one who's being called the bad names, he does not transgress the limits, meaning he does not say more than what was mentioned to him. So for this individual, the one who himself is being called bad names and he did not begin that, he has the right to respond back. He has the right to respond back. So this is what the author mentioned in the title and the indication of that in that statement, Sabbul Muslimi biduni haqq. So the first one, he does not have the right to do that. But whenever he did that to the other individual, now he has the right to respond back with the likes thereof and not to increase. And as long as he does not increase over that which was mentioned to him, then the sin will be upon the first one, and he will bear the sin of both of them. And he will bear the sin of both of them. But if the second person, he increased upon what was mentioned to him, and then he added another word or more words in the likes like this, and more name calling, then he would also share in that sin. Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned about this issue in his explanation of Riyadh al-Salihin, and he says, فَإِنِ اعْتَدَى صار عليه الإثم. So if he transgressed the limits, then he would also have a sin. وفي هذا دليل على أنه يجوز للإنسان أن يسب صاحبه بمثل سبه به ولا يعتدي. So this is an evidence here that it's permissible for a person to call an individual bad names in their face according to what they called them. But if he transgressed, then he shares in the sin. He shares in the sin. He says, فَإِنِ اعْتَدَى فَعَلَيْهِ وَإِنْ أَخَذَ بِحَقِّهِ بِدُونِ زِيَادَةٍ فَلَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ شَيْءٌ وَاللَّهُ الْمُوَفِّقُ. That if he transgressed the limits, then the sin will be upon him. And the second one, if he transgressed the limits in responding to him with more than what was mentioned, he increased upon that, then the sin will be upon him as well. But if he only mentioned back and he defending himself and getting his right, he called him the same thing. He mentioned a word to him, he mentioned the same back to him, like this. He has the right to do that. This is what this hadith indicates. Then he will not have no sin upon him. And this is what Shaykh Uthaymeen, he mentioned, rahimahullah ta'ala. So, المتسابان ما قال فعال البادئ يعني فالإثم على البادئ وفعال البادئ الإثم يعني منهما ما لم يعتدي المظلوم, so long as the one who is oppressed did not transgress the limits. The author, she says, وقوله فعال البادئ أي الإثم, يعني upon the first one. يعني what is upon the first one? What does that mean? Meaning the sin. The sin is upon the first one. The sin is upon the first one, meaning so long as the second one did not transgress the limits in responding. And the sin of both of their statements. This is the point here. This is the sin of both of their statements. So the first one, he did not have right to call a person bad names to his face. But whenever he did that, the one who was being called the bad names, he has the right now. He has the right now to respond bil mithl in the same manner. He has that right. But if he did not respond and he just pardoned the person, or he turned away, وَأَعْرَضَ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِ, turned away from the ignorant person, he did not meet his foolishness with foolishness, and he did not respond to him, this is better. He pardoned him, and instead of saying the same thing to him, he said kind words. I'll talk to you later. I'm not going to get into it with you right now. You say that about me, okay, I'll talk to you later, inshallah. Or just ignore him and leave. This is better. But the right that a person has, he can take that. And this is the issue here. So the author, she says, وَمَنْ اُعْتُدِيَ عَلَيْهِ فَرَدَّ عَنْ نَفْسِهِ جَازَ لَهُ الرَّدُّ بِالْمِثِلِ. The one who is transgressed against and then he responded to in defense of himself, it's permissible for him to respond in that which is similar or the same to what was mentioned to him. She mentions a statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, قالت تعالى فَمَنِ اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ فَاعْتَدُوا عَلَيْهِ بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ. That whoever transgresses against you the limits, then transgress against them the limits with the likes of that which they transgressed against you with. And meaning the evidence here is do not go beyond that. Do not go beyond that. وقال subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَإِنْ عَاقَبَتُمْ فَعَاقِبُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا عُوقِبَتُمْ بِهِ. And if you punish your enemy, the meaning of this noble verse of Allah Azza wa Jal, and if you punish your enemy, now, if you punish your enemy, or an individual even, in statement or in action, then you do that according to the manner that you have been inflicted. Meaning in the same way, without increasing, without going beyond the limits, without going beyond the boundaries. Now, but then the verse it continues, and Allah He says, وَلَئِن صَبَرْتُمْ لَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لِلصَّابِرِينَ. But if you were to be patient, then it is better for those who are patient. Then it is better for those who are patient. So to defend an individual, this is permissible. If a person he acts foolishly towards another individual, calling him names or talking bad to him or acting ignorant with him and the likes like this, it's permissible for a person to respond to that. And with the same, so long as he does not transgress the limits, so long as he does not respond with more than that which was mentioned to him, and the likes like this. And a person, if he's harmed, he can defend himself in the same manner that he's harmed until the person he leaves him. Now, and the likes like this, but he can't transgress even more. He can't do more than what is being done to him and inflict more damage than which is being inflicted to him. And this is the case. So if a person does an injustice, and with speech or in action, then it's permissible for one to defend himself, and with speech and action, but only accordingly, and not transgressing those limits, and not in a manner which is beyond that which was done to them. And the people with regards to this, they're in three categories. The people with regards to dealing with the foul manners of others and the likes, there are three categories. From them, there are those, and this is the highest level, that whenever somebody acts foolish with them or deals with them unjustly, then they pardon them and they forgive them. خُذِ الْعَفْوَ. And like Allah He mentioned in His book, to show forgiveness and to pardon. This is the highest rank and stage. Somebody did an injustice or oppression to them, He'll pardon them and forgive them and overlook their fault and error. Then the second case is an individual, he will not pardon them, but he will get his right back, but he will not transgress the limits. And this is what is being mentioned here, that if a person did not want to pardon that individual and he wanted to get his right back, then he can do that, but he only takes what is his right and he does not go beyond that. He does not oppress in getting his right back or defending himself. And the third issue, and this is the worst of them, the first one is the lofty status, and the second one is permissible, and this one is haram. The third status or third rank or condition of the people with regards to injustices and oppression being done to them is that they will respond back with a more severe and a greater way. They will respond back in a manner that is worse and more severe than that which was done to them, whether it's in speech or in action, and this is oppression. And this is oppression, and a person he will be held accountable for that. So she mentions the next statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَقَالَ وَجَزَاءُ سَيِّئَةٍ سَيِّئَةٌ مِثْلُهَا. And another evidence or proof for this issue is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal that the recompense for a bad deed is a bad deed the like thereof. And the recompense for a bad deed is not two bad deeds. The recompense for a bad deed is not three bad deeds. The recompense for harm is not greater harm, but rather the recompense for evil is the evil, the likes thereof. وَجَزَاءُ سَيِّئَةٍ سَيِّئَةٌ مِثْلُهَا. Any similar and like it, any precisely. So therefore, even if somebody were to defend himself and to defend his honor and his reputation and the likes like that, this is permissible, but not to go into transgression and not to go beyond the limits and not to respond in a manner more severe or worse than that which was mentioned or done to that individual. Now, so the author, she says, حفظه الله تعالى فالله يعلم أن طباع البشر تتأثر بالاعتداء عليها. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows that the temperament and the manners, the temperament of the people, of the human beings, they're affected. It becomes affected. The people, they become affected whenever their limits or their rights are transgressed, or whenever there's transgression being performed against them. فَأَبَاحَ لَهَا الرَّدَّ بِالْحَقِّ. So Allah has made it permissible for them to respond, in truth and in right and in justice or justfully. على أن الأولى والأحسن أن تقابل أو أن تقابل السيئة بالحسنة. And Allah has made it permissible to respond in justice and right, but what is more rightful and better and what is more correct and excellent in manners and in deed and in conduct is to meet the bad deed with a good deed. Is to meet the bad deed with the good deed. The one who does al-isa, or injustice or harm or oppression or wrong to an individual, the best and the most lofty rank is to respond to that with ihsan, to respond with that in good manners, to respond to that in a noble way, and to say words that are upright and good, and that one will be safe by way of them from falling into sin. وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما. يعني قالوا يعني كلاما يسلمون به من الإثم. يسلمون به من الإثم. So to pardon is better. To pardon is better. But sometimes it's not always better to pardon. But this is the origin. But some people, they're known for transgression. And some people, they're criminals. And some people, they're foul. And this type of individual, if he is pardoned, then he will continue to oppress others. And he will continue to transgress against the rights of others. And this type of individual, he will not be pardoned. He would not be pardoned. Rather, he would be held accountable. And he would be taken by the hand and he would be stopped. And this person must be checked in this manner like this. But this is in the case of somebody who has transgressed the limits, and he's known for that. And pardoning does not help this individual. And pardoning will not rectify the situation. But rather, this person, what he needs to be, in order for to be rectified, or in order to be rectified, is that he be checked and he be taken into account. But the origin is that the best way. And whenever there is any injustice and the likes like this, and what Allah has encouraged in His book, for the believers to pardon and for them to repress their anger. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah praising the traits of the righteous, and He mentioned from them that there are those who repress their anger. Whenever they become angry, they do not show it, they do not release it. Now, they repress their anger, and they pardon the people, and Allah, He loves those who do good. And Allah, He loves those who do good. Likewise, the author now, she mentions some beautiful verses from the book of Allah Azza wa Jal, from Surah Fussilat. She says, وَقَالَ تَعَالَى وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ ادْفَعْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم وما يلقاها إلا الذين صبروا وما يلقاها إلا ذو حظ عظيم. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions that the good deed and the evil deed, they could never be equal. So you must repel the evil with the one which is better, and the one that is good. And this means that Allah, He orders the upright believers to be patient at the time of anger, and to excuse those who treat them badly. And one of the verses that will explain this is in Surah Al-Imran, which I mentioned before. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And then verily he who between them that you have enmity with, then he will become as if he was a close friend. And this is the result and the fruit of showing pardon and showing forgiveness. And to the people, that the one who does that at one time or in the beginning of the affair, maybe they're enemies, and between them is enmity and the likes and rancor. But because an individual, he responded to that enmity and that rancor or those foul manners in a beautiful way, now what did Allah say? فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ أَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. So then suddenly, the one that you have enmity between you and him, now it's as if he is a close friend, and from the closest of friends. And because of this beautiful and good dealings in this manner, from the beautiful good dealings in this manner. It has been mentioned by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma that in the tafsir of this verse, Ibn Kathir, he mentioned this rahimahullah ta'ala. He says, أمر الله المؤمنين بالصبر عند الغضب والحلم عند الجهل والعفو عند الإساءة. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he says that Allah Azza wa Jal has commanded the believers with patience at the time of anger, and with forbearance at the time of when someone deals with them in ignorance and foolishness, and with pardoning whenever someone does an injustice to them. فإذا فعلوا ذلك عصمهم الله من الشيطان. And if they were to perform that in that manner, then Allah will protect them and save them from shaitan. وَخَضَعَ لَهُمْ عدوهم كأنه ولي حميم. And also from the result of that, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he mentioned that also, and because of that, their enemy will submit to them and surrender and be humble to them as if he is a close and near friend. As if he is a close and near friend. Likewise, the author, Hafidahullah Ta'ala, she mentions, along with these verses here in Surah Al-Fussilat, some more verses that are beautiful in this affair in Surah Al-Shura. And she mentions the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَالَّذِينَ يَجْتَنِبُونَ كَبَائِرَ الْإِثْمِ وَالْفَوَاحِشَ وَإِذَا مَا غَضِبُوا هُمْ يَغْفِرُونَ وَالَّذِينَ اسْتَجَابُوا لِرَبِّهِمْ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَهُمُ الْبَغْيُ هُمْ يَنْتَصِرُونَ وَجَزَاءُ سَيِّئَةٍ سَيِّئَةٌ مِثْلُهَا فَمَنْ عَفَا وَأَصْلَحَ فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ إنه لا يحب الظالمين ولمن انتصر بعد ظلمه فأولئك ما عليهم من سبيل إنما السبيل على الذين يظلمون الناس ويبغون في الأرض بغير الحق أولئك لهم عذاب أليم ولمن صبر وغفر إن ذلك لمن عزم الأمور إن ذلك لمن عزم الأمور. Now, she mentioned the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, the meaning of which is that those who avoid the greater sins, any of the major sins, and the fawahish, the foul and indecent actions and statements, and when they are angry, they forgive. And when they are angry, they forgive. وَإِذَا مَا غَضِبُوا هُمْ يَغْفِرُونَ. And those who answer the call of their Lord, and they perform as-salat, and who conduct their affairs by mutual consultation, and who spend of what we have bestowed upon them. And those who, when an oppressive wrong is done to them, take revenge. وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَهُمُ الْبَغْيُ هُمْ يَنْتَصِرُونَ. And he take revenge without transgressing the limits. And they avenge themselves with the understanding that which has preceded, without going beyond that, without going beyond the manner that they have been wronged, and without transgressing in the manner that they or going further than the manner that they themselves have been inflicted, whether it's a statement or an action. Whether it's a statement or an action. And then Allah, He clarifies that the recompense for an evil is an evil, the like thereof, meaning that whenever they do avenge themselves, they do not go beyond the evil that was done to them. They do not transgress the limits, even in defense of themselves. But whoever forgives, then Allah, He mentions, but whoever forgives and makes reconciliation, his reward is with Allah. Verily, He likes not the oppressors and wrongdoers. And indeed, whosoever takes revenge after he has suffered wrong, for such there is no blame, no way of blame against him. For such there is no way of blame against him. And the way of blame is only against those who oppress men and rebel in the earth without justification. For such there will be a painful torment. For such there will be a painful torment. Now, so Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentioned those three categories of people, or the levels of the people with regards to dealing with oppression and injustices that are done towards them, whether physically or verbally. And Allah, He mentioned that وَجَزَاءُ سَيِّئَةٍ سَيِّئَةٌ مِثْلُهَا فَمَنْ عَفَا وَأَصْلَحَ فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. This is the highest rank, that the recompense for an evil is an evil like thereof. But whoever forgives and makes reconciliation, whoever forgives and pardons and makes reconciliation, then his reward is with Allah. Then his reward is with Allah. And this is the highest rank and status, that whenever they have the right, the bad for the bad, and to respond to them with the likes thereof. Now, but whoever forgives and makes reconciliation, then his reward is with Allah. Allah is encouraging pardoning and showing forgiveness, and forgiving and making reconciliation. And then likewise He mentions وَلَمَنْ انْتَصَرَ بَعْدَ ظُلْمِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَا عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ سَبِيلٍ. And indeed whoever or whosoever takes revenge after he has suffered wrong, for such there is no blame against him, or such there is no blame against them. So meaning that this is the affair that's permissible, mubaha. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He made it permissible for the person to avenge himself, and accordingly, without transgressing the limits. And then, so this is the second category, or the second level, or status of the people with regards to dealing with injustices. And then Allah, He mentions إِنَّمَا السَّبِيلُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ يَظْلِمُونَ النَّاسِ وَيَبْغُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ. The way of blame is only against those who oppress men and rebel in the earth without justification. So whether that comes from the one initially, that he initially oppressed the individual, or if he was oppressed himself and then he responded with injustice as well, and he responded in a manner that was greater than that was done to him, then likewise this is not permissible. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He does not love those who work wickedness and evil. So this is the affair here, that the issue is that it's permissible for a person to defend himself and to avenge himself in a manner that is without going beyond the limits and that which is allowed. And that which is allowed is clarified. فَمَنْ اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ فَاعْتَدُوا عَلَيْهِ بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ وَإِنْ عَاقَبْتُمْ فَعَاقِبُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا عُوقِبْتُمْ بِهِ وَجَزَاءُ سَيِّئَةٍ سَيِّئَةٌ مِثْلُهَا. There's not permissible to go beyond that. It's not permissible to go beyond that. So a person, he has a right to defend himself accordingly, according to that which was done against him, according to that which he has been inflicted with, whether it's verbally or physically. But he does not have the right to go beyond that. If he went beyond that, then he likewise will be amongst the oppressors. He likewise will be amongst the oppressors. And what a disgusting and filthy example we have with regards to this in the Jews. And we've seen how they were oppressed. They were oppressed by the Germans, and how they were dealt with in such a filthy manner. And that was the decree of Allah for them, and the likes like this, a punishment against them. But then after that, whenever they have security and safety again, they begin doing what? Oppressing, just as they were oppressed, or even worse. Naam. So this is foul, and this is not permissible, and this is not the way of the righteous and the pious. The permissible way is to take the right back accordingly, without transgressing the limits, without doing more or going beyond the manner that they were going greater than the injustice that was done against them. And Allah has encouraged to pardon and to show forgiveness and to strive to make reconciliation and to not even get that right back and to hope for the reward from Allah Azza wa Jal. Likewise, she says, حفظها الله, وقال تعالى مادحا من يقابل الشر بالخير. And likewise, Allah, He has praised the one who meets the evil with good. When she mentioned the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal in Surah Al-Ra'd, وَالَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا ابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ رَبِّهِمْ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَأَنْفَقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ سِرًّا وَعَلَانِيَةً وَيَدْرَؤُونَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ السَّيِّئَةِ أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عُقْبَى الدَّارِ. That those who are patient, seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking the countenance of Allah Azza wa Jal, and they establish the prayer and they spend of that which we have given them in private and in public, and they defend and repel the bad deed with the good deed. These they are the ones who have the good ending and the good home, meaning in the Jannah. So Allah is praising them in their traits, those people who are patient in performing the obligations and complying to the commandments of Allah, and those who are patient in avoiding and staying away from the prohibitions that Allah has made impermissible, patient upon the painful decrees and the calamities in sickness and in wealth and the likes, and in loved ones that befall an individual in this life, patient upon all of this, seeking the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal, seeking the pleasure of their Lord, and they establish the prayer and they spend from what that has been provided for them, what Allah has provided for them, and sirran wa alaniya. And these are the traits, the beautiful traits that Allah is praising these people who are patient for, and that they have the good home of the hereafter. And they spend in private and in public. And then also from their characteristics, and this is the point here in the issue, وَيَدْرَؤُونَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ السَّيِّئَةِ, that they repel the bad deed with a good deed. They repel the bad deed with a good deed. And these are the ones who have the good and final abode, the good outcome in the end. Likewise, she says, وَقَالَ أُولَٰئِكَ يُؤْتُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ مَرَّتَيْنِ بما صبروا ويدرؤون بالحسنة السيئة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. Also a similar verse in Surah Al-Qasas, that those who will be given their reward 2 times. And this is in reference, Mujahid, he mentioned نزلت في قوم من أهل الكتاب أسلموا فأوذوا. يعني أولئك يؤتون أجرهم مرتين. Those individuals, they will be given their reward twice. Mujahid, rahimahullah ta'ala, he died in year 104. He said that this verse was revealed about the people of the book who accepted Islam, and then they were harmed because of their religion. This is revealed about the people of the book who accepted Islam, and then they were harmed because of their religion. So Allah mentioned that they'll get their reward twice. They will get their reward twice for believing in their Prophet and then believing in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. and believing in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But also Allah mentioned from their traits, bima sabaru, bima sabaru, that they're going to get their reward twice because they were patient. Because they were patient and patient upon the harm that they met now in their new deen, following and accepting Al-Islam and believing in the final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and also praising them for this trait here. وَيَدْرَؤُونَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ السَّيِّئَةِ, and they repel the evil deed with the good deed. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, and that which we have provided them they spend, and from their wealth. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he mentioned particularly about this verse here, and the one that's in reference to the people of the book who accepted Islam and then they were harmed upon that way. He says, يَدْفَعُونَ بِالشَّهَادَةِ لَا إِلَهِ إِلَّا اللَّهِ الشِّرْكِ. The meaning here, وَيَدْرَؤُونَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ السَّيِّئَةِ, that they repel that foul and evil deed with a good deed. He says that they are repelling and they are removing by way of the testification that there's nothing worthy of worship except for Allah. By that they have repelled and removed shirk from themselves. This is one understanding. But Muqatil from the Tabi'een, he mentioned rahimahullah ta'ala, يَدْفَعُونَ مَا سَمِعُوا مِنَ الْأَذَى وَالشَّتَمْ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ بِالصَّفْحِ وَالْعَفْوِ. And this is in Tafsir al-Baghawi. That Muqatil, he says that they repel that which they hear from the foul and the bad name calling and that which harms them from the speech that is mentioned to them from the mushrikeen, and after they have accepted al-Islam, and they meet that with pardoning. وَيَدْرَؤُونَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ السَّيِّئَةِ. And this is the point of evidence for the author mentioning this verse in this manner. She says, وفي سنن أبي داود من حديث جابر وفي سنن أبي داود من حديث جابر ابن سليم أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال وَإِنْ امْرُؤٌ شَتَمَكَ وَعَيَّرَكَ بِمَا يَعْلَمُ فِيكَ فَلَا تُعَيِّرْهُ بِمَا تَعْلَمُ فِيهِ فَإِنَّمَا مُبَالُ ذَلِكَ عَلَيْهِ. That if an individual calls you names or speaks bad about you or exposes your faults, then do not do that to him. Do not, if an individual calls you bad names or exposes your faults and speaks bad about you and your shortcomings that he knows about you, then you do not speak bad about him and expose his faults that you know about him. And verily, the foul and evil outcome of that whole affair will be upon him. She says, وَالْحَدِيثُ حَسَّنَهُ الْوَالِدِ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهُ فِي صَحِيحِ الْمُسْنَدِ. And this narration, she says her father has authenticated in his book As-Sahih al-Musnad. The author, she closes this chapter with some lines of poetry and another narration, and bi'idhnillahi ta'ala we will close and complete this one in the next class. هذا وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.